8 years as a coach at the University of Maine and prior player on the 1999 national championship team. So already very established name in Maine. I remember when we announced his hiring, everyone seemed to already know who he was. He's that kind of guy. He's just a great guy. I've enjoyed my interactions with him. Obviously, he brings a wealth of knowledge when it comes to pro hockey for all the years he played, primarily with Colorado. Actually made his debut with the Boston Bruins, and has experience at all different levels. And even though he hasn't coached, he hasn't been a head coach or a coach in the pros, the transition has been seamless. I mean, there's so many similarities between college hockey and the ECHL when it comes to the players playing for something more, trying to advance their careers, especially the modern ECHL, where there's so many young players down here and they aspire to move up the ladder. So in many ways, it's not all that different from college hockey players that are looking beyond what comes, or looking to what comes next. So Ben's been awesome to work with. He seems to have an idea of exactly what he wants this team to look like, even though he came into a position where many players were already signed. When Riley moved on, it was early August. So I've been impressed with him through training camp, through the 2 preseason games, and now we'll get to see when the lights are shining brightest tomorrow night how his team performs.
Well, let's talk about that roster a little bit. You had Justin Brazeau assigned to you guys earlier today, and he joins a pretty veteran-laden group up front with Connor Bleakley, and then you have Cameron Askew, who has played in the ECHL as well. This looks like a Maine Mariners team that can put goals up in bushels, at least on paper, early on this year.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of potential there. I think there was some concern among our fans because of the top 3 of the top 4 scorers not returning. One of them is now behind the bench, and Terrence Wallen, Dylan Fox retiring, Michael McNicholas going over to Europe. So Alex Kyle is back, but a lot of new faces. But as you just alluded to there, a lot of guys with pretty good resumes in this league. I think the Brazeau addition is a big time difference maker. I mean, he brings 100 points in the OHL, almost a point per game, an all rookie for Newfoundland in 2019-20. And he's just that rare combination of size and skill. He's 6'6", and he can put the puck in the net. And so that's going to be huge. So I do think he brings it to another level. And so it seems to be a pretty good mix of guys that have been around a little while, and also a lot of young, hungry guys that are looking to make names for themselves.
You guys switched affiliations over the summer, going from the New York Rangers affiliate to the Boston Bruins affiliate, and that really kind of syncs up the affiliation tree with Providence to the south of Boston, and now the ECHL Maine Mariners being to the north of Boston. From what you can tell, what has been the tone among the fans about the affiliation change? Do they seem to be in favor of it, or is it something that really hasn't registered on the radar yet?
No, they've overwhelmingly been in favor of it. I think it's what most of them wanted from the beginning. I think you come into Portland and you look at the other minor league sports teams here, and you got the Portland Sea Dogs being the AA affiliate of the Red Sox, and you've got the Maine Celtics, formerly the Maine Red Claws, affiliated with the Boston Celtics. And so we get to complete that trifecta now. And I know that for some of them that have been diehard fans over the decades of which hockey has been played here in Portland, there's still some sour grapes because the Bruins moved the AHL Mariners out of Portland and into Springfield back in 1991, 92. So obviously understanding this is a different situation. We're a different level, different organization. There's really, to hold a grudge, but it doesn't make a lot of sense anymore. But overall, most hockey fans in this area are Boston Bruins fans, and the chance for them to be able to see potential future Bruins players, or even just having a connection in any way, has made all the difference. We've seen it in the ticket sales. We've seen it in the enthusiasm, and a bunch of, I would say, an entire new group of people that weren't necessarily paying much attention to us before have begun to do so now, based on this affiliation. So it's great for us, and I hope it'll be great for the Bruins as well, having a much easier travel for their prospects going from, whether it's going from ECHL to AHL or in any direction, really.
Every time that Matthew and I talk about a division, we start to get into the conversation of, wow, this is a really tough division. and the North might be one of the most tough, just because each one of those teams not only has the pedigree to be one of the best, but has the records and the current lineups to support that. So, how do the Maine Mariners navigate through this season and find a way into the playoffs?
Well, this division's always tough. I mean, that's something that former head coach Riley Armstrong and I would talk about all the time on our pregame interviews. Is that it's cliche, but the North Division has always kind of been an anyone can beat anyone on any night type of division, and you just don't know what the impact of this year off is going to have, because remember, the entire division was off and many players are not coming back. I think looking through the rosters, it looks to me like Adirondack is the team with the most players back from 2 seasons ago. Don't quote me on that. That's just the eye test. But they're always a tough building to play in. Reading had a really good year. They certainly got the shortest end of the stick when it came to COVID canceling the season, because they were looking like that they were going to make a run. Obviously, Newfoundland won the Kelly Cup, and they're always loaded from Toronto's prospect pipeline. I'm sure Trois-Rivières is going to have some good players. So it's not knowing. It's tough to project based off of 2019-20 what the division is going to look like, because so many players have gone different ways now. But just knowing the coaches that are here, the ones that are back, and the new ones. It's going to be competitive once again. It's just the brand of hockey you get up here too, is you have a lot of hardworking players that they realize that in the Northeast, they are just a stone's throw away from a lot of these AHL organizations, not only the ones within the actual affiliate system of their teams, but teams that they could get loaned to outside the organization. They know that they're always watching, and there's scouts often showing up at games. And I think all those factors make the North Division ultra competitive every year.
One of the things that makes one of the teams in the North so unique is the support that Newfoundland gets from their AHL and NHL affiliations. In every year that they've played, they've had double-digit players down from AHL Toronto. When you go up against a team with that many AHL caliber players, how does a team prepare for a game like that?
Well, I mean, I think the players don't really think much about it. I think they're worried about their own game, and whoever's on the other side, they know is going to be trying to win a hockey game. And it may serve as motivation as well. I mean, if you go out and beat a team that's loaded with AHL players, that gives you a lot of confidence, and it makes you think that you could play at that level. I think there's obviously always an opportunity for teams to, depending on where they are in their seasons, be more loaded than the other. For example, when we went up to Newfoundland in February of 2020, right before the pandemic, Newfoundland was setting their record for consecutive home wins. They got it up to 19, breaking the ECHL record against us. And then right around that time, they had a slew of call-ups, losing guys to the Marlies, and the Mariners were able to win the next 3 in Newfoundland, becoming the only team to do so to that organization so far. So the nature of the league is you never know what the makeup of the other team is going to be on a given game. It all depends on what happens above. And now, especially with the COVID element, I think the movement is going to be even more erratic at times. So, you can't worry too much about who's on the other side. You just got to try to play your own game. And I think the coaches are most concerned. They're not necessarily concerned about how good the other team is, because in the end, like, you can load a team up with all-stars, and as long as you're a better team that plays more cohesively together, a lot of times I think that makes the difference more than the individual talent on a given team.
We're spending our final few moments here with Maine Mariners broadcaster Michael Keeley in the second period of the 3 periods podcast here tonight. Just want to go back to the overall semblance of the kind of the thing that I've been harping on here for the last couple of weeks, is that the family is reunited this year with everybody coming back into the ECHL +2. What is the one thing you're looking forward to tomorrow night?
Well, it's going to be having fans back in the building. I mean, I think watching sports, even on TV over the last year, as fans slowly made their way back in from limited capacity to, half a full building to finally full buildings again, it really makes all the difference in the world. I mean, I remember watching NHL games last year without fans and thinking I'm still watching really good hockey games, but it's so stunning, so striking what is missing here.
It felt weird.
What's that?
It felt weird.
It absolutely, it felt weird, and there was no way to shake that feeling at all. Even with pumped in crowd noise or virtual fans or cardboard cutouts. I mean, even if you could fool your eyes, it was impossible to fool your soul, I guess, right? You knew inherently something was missing there. So, I mean, I think if you ask anyone, that's probably the answer they're going to give. I mean, us as broadcasters, I think I speak for most of us when I say one of my favorite parts about broadcasting is having that energy of the crowd behind you as you're sitting up in that press box with everyone down in front of you making a lot of noise. So when the Mariners score that first goal and you hear the roar of the crowd tomorrow night, I mean, that's the moment I know I'm never going to forget. I'll never forget the very first game I did in 2018, but I have a feeling this one may be even a little bit more special just because of how long it's been and because of all the anticipation. And it's going to be a moment that I'm going to cherish for a long time and has been way too long a time coming.
Almost kind of like a second opening night for you guys.
Well, right, and it really is comparable because the city of Portland went 2 years without any hockey between the departure of the Portland Pirates in 2016 and then our arrival in 2018. So our big pitch going into that year, as we were launching off the ground, was hockey's back here in Portland. Like there was that pent up energy. I mean, Portland had hockey from 1977 to 2016, and just those 2 years without it was devastating on the fans in the city. And now basically you have the same thing happen, not quite 2 full years, but basically a year and a half. It really does feel similar. I am having some of those similar emotions as I had going into that, where I was feeling like the city's been so hungry for hockey to come back, and we'll see how it feels this time around.
What is a successful season for the Maine Mariners this year?
It's tough to say because you have a new head coach, right? And he's always going to set expectations high. But I really think the team has got to make the playoffs if you're looking at the overall feeling around the team. And it's almost unfair to expect that because you have a new head coach, you have a largely new roster. But if you're looking at the organization and their trajectory, they had a winning record in 18-19. They were going to make the playoffs, barring a collapse, with those 10 games that didn't get played in 19-20. And so now you almost have to make that next step to the playoffs. Again, it's unfair in many ways to put that on a first-year head coach, but based on the culture that's been built here, I think a successful season would have to include a playoff appearance. And I think it's within reach based on the talent on this roster, the help we hopefully will be getting from Providence and Boston, and the even though it is a small core, the talent of the returning core that we do have here.
The Maine Mariners open up I guess this will be the 2.0 version of the Maine Mariners kickoff tomorrow night at 6:15 Central Time or Eastern Time, or 6:15 Central, 7:15 East against the Worcester Railers. You can hear that game here on the Field Pass Hockey app, and the man who will bring you the action this year for all of the Maine Mariner games is Michael Keeley. Michael, thank you very much for doing this. We're proud to be working with you guys and airing Mariners hockey this year, and let's catch up down the road.
Absolutely. Anytime, guys. Thanks for having me, and just happy to be back.
No problem, Dan. Thank you very much. Good to see you.
You too.
All right. There goes Michael Keeley of the Maine Mariners, as that is one division down here on the Three Periods podcast.
Absolutely. And he said it best. That North Division is anyone can beat anyone on any given night. And I think we're going to see it throughout the year. I love the idea of this bring back hockey to Maine. I think tomorrow's going to be electric, especially with that year off. We already saw it in Trois-Rivières. We're going to see it at all of the home openers for these teams who didn't get to play last year. It is going to be unreal.
I can't, like, he tried to convey the emotion, and I'm sitting here having chills thinking about, man, could you imagine having Michael's opportunity to call the first goal in Maine Mariners history, and then now you get to call the first goal again of 2.0. I mean, this really does feel like Maine Mariners 2.0, getting ready to launch tomorrow night, and just the emotions that you might have. And I don't know how I'm going to feel when I walk into an arena for the first time and there not be any restrictions on fans. I don't know how that's going to feel. I can't imagine going 500 days without hockey and plus days without hockey and not even being allowed to walk into an arena and things like that. I just cannot imagine the range of emotions rolling through him this evening. I will imagine will probably be a very sleepless night for him.
And I think it's one thing to go 500 plus days in a hockey community that maybe uh, where hockey's not as strong, but you go to that North Division where they are starving for
Oh
hockey,
yeah,
and you're getting. I mean, we saw it in Trois Rivières. That's a market that already has hockey, but that specific market wanted their own team, and they showed out, selling out the game 72 hours ahead of time. They had rally towels tonight. It looked like a playoff game, and I think most of those North Division openers are going to look like playoff games because these fans are just ready to be back in a hockey arena.
it's going to be an instant playoff atmosphere from night one. Guarantee it. It's going to be tremendous to watch those games up in the north tomorrow night. And again, you can hear the games from the Maine Mariners and Michael Keeley here on the Field Pass Hockey app. While we're waiting for our next guest, head coach Andrew Lord of the Greenville Swamp Rabbits, I do want to talk about that. We have 5 ECHL teams on the app this year, Matt, and this is a huge expansion for us. Not only in the American Hockey League, but in the SPHL and even here in the ECHL, to have 9 teams broadcasting games on our app here this year.
Yeah, and when I first found out that we were going to have a couple of these extra teams, uh, it's so much more than just covering the game of hockey. It's the fact that we have the opportunity to bring all of these different hockey communities together and give them an outlet to show games. We have games from all 3 leagues this year. That's really awesome. A lot of these markets are markets where there's good hockey going on night in, night out, and now you can listen to games across the country or countries if you count Canada.
Yeah.
And it's going to be very cool to get the opportunity to hear some of those. I already have taken the advantage of using our app to listen to the Evansville broadcast last week because the stream was the Quad City stream. So I was able to sync it up with the Evansville one, and that was pretty cool. So little pro tip for you. You can look up some of the games on our app and put them next to your screen. So
that's right. That's right. Getting ready to shift gears to the South Division. And again, we'll be joined by Andrew Lord, head coach of the Greenville Swamp Rabbits here momentarily. What are some of the things that that you're going to be watching out for here this year? Some of the early storylines from the South Division.
Well, I think the first one is that South Carolina was so good in that Eastern Conference final last year in order to advance to the Kelly Cup final against the Fort Wayne Comets, and really showed that despite a shaky year, they made it happen when it mattered. And I mean, you and I even said it probably halfway through the year. We said there's no way this South Carolina team fails to make the playoffs.
Right.
And they made their case known when they got there. It's enough. We're going to keep saying it. I'm sorry, but anyone can beat anyone in some of these divisions because there is so much talent loaded throughout it. When you look at Florida, Greenville, South Carolina, and Orlando, those are the 4 that really stick out to you right away. You can almost pick the 4 out of a hat. I think I mentioned to you right before the show, or maybe right as we started the show, that we could be going to the last week of the season, maybe even the last night of the season, and not know who the first 3 seeds are there.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I'm excited to see that here, and the man to talk about that, and he's going to have a whole lot of say in this, is the head coach of the Greenville Swamp Rabbits, Andrew Lord. Coach Lord, thank you very much for joining us. How you doing, sir? Maybe. Hopefully that works. Technology is infallible sometimes, or is fallible sometimes. Let's try that again. He's gonna try it again. So while we wait for him to come back, like we said, this is live technology. You know how it goes. But yeah, the one team that I am really intrigued by in the South, and I'm intrigued by them all, is Norfolk. Like, that is a fan base and a team that is starving for for some success, and they're paired up with Chicago this year, and it just seems like it's going to be. I think that they're going to have a lot to say about that here in the South Division this year. Let's try head coach Andrew Lord again. Coach, thanks very much for doing this. It's Matthew Will and Matthew Harding. How you doing? Maybe. We do not have Coach Lord, so that is interesting. So, yeah, why don't you go ahead and take that here for a moment, Matt, while I try and figure out what's going on here.
Yeah, and I think I proved the point that I was going to make in the end anyway, and that was the 4 teams I mentioned of Florida, South Carolina, Greenville, and Orlando are the teams that we expect to be fighting each other at the end of the year, and it opens the door for a Norfolk, a Jacksonville, who's hosting the All-Star game, and in Atlanta to sneak in there and say, hey, we're here too, and we're ready for good, powerful hockey. And the fact that the 3 of them did not play last year gives them the opportunity to, have the fresh year come in and make a name for yourself down there.
Yeah. You talked about the South Carolina Stingrays and the team that they had. I thought Travis Rogers wrote a really good piece, wrote his season preview piece, and it was really good today on fieldpasshockey.com, and broke down the changes that they've gone through this year. We'll pick that up here in just a minute. We're going to try one more time here and bring in the head coach of the Greenville Swamp Rabbits, Andrew Lord. Coach, let's hope the third time is the right time.
You guys got me now?
Yeah.
There we go.
Loud and clear. Thank you very much for doing this, man. How are you?
I'm great. Yeah, I was on my phone there, and my iPad or iPods weren't working for some reason, so the computer is now good to go. But yeah, it's great. Great to have me on here. Really appreciate it. I'm excited to chat some hockey.
Well, let's start by last year. You came over to North America from a really star-studded career over in Great Britain, where you won 9 championships, and you really worked on this Greenville Swamp Rabbits team. What did you learn about that team from last year that went all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals that you felt like helped you with recruiting and align it better as you get ready to start this season?
Well, I think it was really important to get a core group back, and we've been fortunate enough to do that. So, we're going to have anywhere from 8 to 10, 11 guys, depending on how things shake out here with guys up in the American League and whatnot. So I think that's a great starting spot for us, and just allows us to be, a lot further ahead than last year, where we basically brought back Liam Pecoraro, and that was it. So, we really started from scratch. As far as, Greenville, I think it's a really undercover, great spot to play. I know our ownership and president and myself and our whole organization is very keen to turn it into a powerhouse in the league. It's a great city. Weather's obviously incredible. Green is nice. The players get treated very well. So I think there's a ton of positives, and we're just looking to continue to build here going into the second season of this, new ownership group and whatnot.
One of the things that really made your team special last year is you didn't have a scorer who really showed out among the league leaders and was near the top of the league lead in points. You really spread your offense around really effectively. What leads into having such a well-rounded offense like that?
Yeah, it was funny how it worked out. We had two D-men light it up. They did great. Our forwards were a little bit slower, but as you said, really spread out. We had a number of 10+ goal scorers, and I think it was really by committee. I think it just allowed us. The other thing to remember is there was one extra roster spot last year, right? So we were able to roll almost 4 lines, where this year is going to be much more 3-line hockey because of the numbers. But no, I think it's effective. And you do need the culture and the buy-in to be able to do that, to spread it out, and to guys to for guys to take a few less minutes of ice time. And fortunately, we had a great group, and the guys bought into it. And I think it was a big reason for our success there, in the regular season and into the playoffs.
As we looked at all of the teams in the South, or I guess it was the East last year, Greenville was one of the teams near the beginning of the season a lot of people were starting to look over. What led to really putting a name up for yourselves and potentially going near to the end and fighting for a Kelly Cup?
Yeah, I think it was a lot. I mean, winning is hard, as everyone knows, and you just chip away at it day to day. And we're very process driven. Take it one game at a time. We don't try to chunk the season up or anything like that. We literally just go one game at a time. And I think we improved, week to week, game to game, month to month. And, I think we were able to kind of round out our roster there through the midpoint and get a little healthier. And everything just sort of clicked there in the second half, and we took off. And I thought we might fare a little better in the playoffs. We did well. We obviously wanted to get another step closer there into the finals, but wasn't meant to be. But I think overall learned a ton, and definitely going to take a lot of that to this season.
How would you assess your first year in the ECHL? If you give it a grade, what grade do you give that, given everything you had to go through with COVID and affiliations and things like that?
I'll let you guys do the rankings, but definitely very proud of it. I think, as you mentioned, our ownership took on, huge risk last season just to play. And for me as a coach, to get to coach, I was very appreciative of that. I know a number of coaching buddies and, mentors that weren't able to coach because, obviously a lot of teams didn't play around not only our league, but around the world. But, I think to tackle that the way we did, and then, just to put that core group in place and to learn a lot of lessons last year and to be that much further ahead this year because of it. I think to finish, I think it was 1 point behind Florida in our conference, and then, to lose to SoCo there in the conference finals, not by much. I think it really put our team back on the map. And, it was definitely nice to get a few calls this summer recruiting wise from agents and from players wanting to come here where the year before it was, there really wasn't a lot of that going on. So I think we've taken some steps, and I definitely would rank it high and a very memorable season as well. Just for myself personally as a coach, finally getting over here and kind of getting back into the North American game.
I know a lot of rosters look different than they did back there in the Kelly Cup playoffs, but you start 3 of your 4 games this season against South Carolina. What do those games mean? Do they mean anything more than the rest of the games on the schedule this year to get to have that rematch to start the year?
I think, they're our arch rival for sure. They've obviously shown what they can do here for many, many years. They're an unbelievable franchise. We're striving to get ourselves right up there with them and the Floridas of the world here in our division and / conference. And, they're looking like a great team again, great goaltending. Their defense, arguably the best in the league right now, I think, on paper. And obviously they got some good players up front as well. So they're going to be a very tough test. And, they always bring it, that team. So I think it'll be some tough games and some fun games to get back at it right off the hop here.
We always talk about how the South Division is kind of top heavy. And in recent years, it has been, with Florida and South Carolina really being the top 1-2 dogs in that conference. You guys are obviously forcing your way into the conversation. Can you break down the rest of that division for us and tell us why we may not be, why not everything that we see in the standings is what it appears?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's tough sledding. You look at it the whole way through, it's good. Atlanta's got some pieces again here. They're going to be a hard-nosed team for sure. Orlando's always very competitive with some high-end skill, high-octane offense like we saw last season. Norfolk, I don't know enough about, but, I'm sure they're going to be competitive, and they got a good new affiliate, and that's the same with a couple of the teams in the conference or division. And Jacksonville, obviously, with a great new young up-and-coming coach. So, it's going to be tougher than ever, and I think it'll be very highly contested and competitive, and there's definitely going to be no easy nights.
Can you tell us a little bit about your guys' affiliation with Charlotte and Florida, how things have gone with that and what you're expecting out of that this year?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, anytime you can be affiliated with AHL and NHL clubs, it's fantastic, right? And they are just up the road, I think, between us and I think Worcester and Springfield. I guess maybe that's more of a working agreement, but it's probably the closest affiliate in the whole league, or between the ECHL and AHL, which is very interesting. Allows for easy travel back and forth and shared resources and all that kind of thing. So I think it's fantastic. I think it's good for the fan base too. I believe there's some trickle down there between the fan bases, which is obviously good from the business side. And then anytime you get to get on the phone with guys like Jordy Kinnear, the coach of Charlotte, or Derek Wilkinson, their VP up there, it's fantastic. Learned a lot from those guys, and we're very lucky to have them as our affiliate. We're excited for this season. It should be good.
Spending our final few moments here with Greenville Swamp Rabbits head coach Andrew Lord here on the Three Periods podcast. How do you guys build off of what you did last year and apply it this year? What does success look like in year 2 under you?
Yeah, I mean, our makeup of our team's a little different, a lot younger. I think we're gonna have to learn here quick. Definitely our learning curve is gonna need to just be moving along at a rapid pace. That being said, I like the core group we have coming back. I think we got our systems down for the most part at this point. I think we have our culture down for sure. The guys get along really well. They definitely are willing to compete for each other and play for each other, which is a huge component of success. And I think it's, again, just that daily approach and getting off to a good start here and then chipping away at it. But it is a very competitive division, like we talked about, and just got to find a way here to grind out some wins and make the playoffs. And then once you get to the dance, anything can happen.
The Greenville Swamp Rabbits head down Interstate 26 to North Charleston Saturday night to take on the South Carolina Stingrays there in the North Charleston Coliseum. Coach Andrew Lord, thank you very much for doing this, man. All the best to you here in the early part of the season. Let's catch up as the season continues to go on. All right, man?
Awesome. Thanks, fellas. Appreciate it.
Hey, no problem. And there goes head coach Andrew Lord here on the Three Periods podcast. It's Matt and Matt with you again. Your thoughts on head coach Andrew Lord?
So calm. I mean, most head coaches are probably going to be calm tonight, night before the season, or 2 nights in his case. But he knows the group of guys he's got on the ice, and he obviously has his trust in them. I like that he brought up that the learning curve is going to be there. I think a lot of teams are going to have to deal with that. The one closest connected to you and I is Wichita, a very young team. Mm-hmm. A lot of teams are going to have to resort to this young players getting up to fast-paced professional hockey, because a lot of these guys are making their professional debuts. So I was really impressed that he sounds as calm as he does 2 nights before the season kicks off, with 3 of their 4 against a South Carolina team who is going to be ready to play night in, night out. This South Division is going to be a ton of fun.
I agree. And I think that calmness that you feel from him has to deal with his nearly 2 fistfuls of rings that he has there in his arsenal. So, it's good to see the Greenville Swamp Rabbits. They've kind of been on the outside looking in here for a little while. I felt like last year they really did do something. They really put a big crack in that glass ceiling, and if they can finish the job this year, then that will be a team that is firmly up in the top 3 of that South Division, which is going to be really, really tough here this year. Another division that is going to be really tough is the Central, and our next guest is on from the Indianapolis Fuel, the Indy Fuel there in Circle City, former Sin Bin alum Mark Granda. What's up, buddy? How you doing?
What's up, man? Thanks for having me on.
Not a problem. How are things there in Circle City as you guys get ready to go for the season?
It's busy, man. It's busy. We're ready for Saturday night. Hoping to have a good crowd, and it's been wild these last couple of weeks, but we're excited.
Tell us a little bit about some of the moves that Coach Christensen made here in the offseason. He brings in a goaltender that Matt and I are both very familiar with, and Mitch Gillum from his days in Wichita. Obviously, bring back Keone Teixeira on the blue line, who's a playmaker up front. Diego Cuglietta and Cedric Lacroix up front as well, with CJ Thomas and CJ Ike as well, or with Jared Thomas and CJ Ike, beg your pardon. That team does look like it's going to potentially grind you down and take advantage of your mistakes.
Yeah, for sure. The one thing that Doug's really thrilled about, and we are too on the content side, is we brought back a really strong core of players. And like you mentioned, Jared Thomas and Tex and guys like that, Spencer Watson, guys that have been here a couple of years now. I mean, this is Tech's third season, and Spencer Watson, I think it's his third in 6 games. But they because he got traded a few years ago by the Blackhawks, or by the LA Kings to the Blackhawks, and so he ended up here. But it's been nice to have those guys come back, and I think that bodes well for the beginning of the season. I mean, these guys already have chemistry from last year, and I think had this team the team last year gotten through Greenville, I think they really could have made a statement in the playoffs.
I do have to say that October 14th was one of my most enjoyable nights for social media hockey, as you guys ended your video highlights and decided to make your little sketches. I just want to know the stories behind that and the creative minds behind that.
Yeah, for sure. That was I have to give all the credit to our digital content director, Casey. She came to me. She's actually brand new. She came to me and was like, "Hey, do you know if Cincinnati's going to have a broadcast or anything like that?" I talked to them, and they were like, "Nope, no flow broadcast, just radio." And I mean, this is nothing new for preseason. So I went to her and was like, "Do what you want." I was like, "You're not going to have highlights." And she was like, "Can I do this?" And I kind of told her, and I was like, "Look, why not? Let's give it a shot." And it ended up, people loved it. And I think you might see it throughout the season, or you might see it on a few other games just to screw around. But it did really, really well on social media. And I mean, people who really don't follow our brand too much, we're laughing a lot.
Before we go any further, I want to, that's one of the things that I think sets the Indy Fuel aside from many teams in the ECHL, is the brand recognition and the brand building that's gone on in the past couple of years. Staying away from the play on the ice, what goes into some of the thought behind that to build such a positive brand around the Indy Fuel?
Yeah, definitely. It started with Brent Hollerud. He kind of started this brand when he came in, just kind of tongue in cheek. Let's have a good time. I mean, not always talking hockey. Obviously, we have the hockey news and all that kind of stuff and the roster moves and whatnot. But at the same time, let's have a good time, like hot dogs or sandwiches and or not. And so that kind of started it. And then it just turned into let's just be goofy. And the past, Rachel O'Donnell, she now works for the Blackhawks. She was hired by the Blackhawks because of that ability to be that way. And now we have Casey, who's running it now, and she's just as good. And so keeping that kind of tongue-in-cheek idea and tongue-in-cheek voice on social media has been super important to us, because like you said, somebody who doesn't necessarily follow the team or care about the team loves our social media because we like to be goofy and like to mess around.
So last year, you guys finish a little lower than you maybe would have hoped, 6th in the league at the very end of the season. But throughout the first half of the season, you guys were the masters of these 1-goal games. Somehow you found yourself in a 1-goal game, I think 90% of the time through the first 20 games, and you had only lost one of them. How critical was it for the team to be so successful in the small games that mattered?
It was huge. I mean, there were the number of overtime games we went to against just Wheeling was insane. And the number of home overtime games that we went to was crazy too. And I mean, if you go back and look at it, then if any of those games go the other way, we could have been dead last in the league. But we were picking up those wins, and the confidence just kept growing and growing and growing. But it actually kind of backfired later on in the season when we lost 6, 7, 8 games straight. And it was like we went from being really good, he got a couple of injuries, a couple of Rockford guys got called up to Rockford and other AHL teams. And now it's like, oh my God, we've never lost before.
Mm-hmm. How did Coach Christensen work through those work through that, I guess, shock to the system in the playoff in the last part of the season and into the playoffs? Because it did seem like there in the final 10 games, you guys righted the ship and were at least headed to the playoffs with some positive juju, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, Doug does an excellent job of keeping the team level headed. And so he kind of looked at them and was like, we know how to play. We know how to play our systems. Let's keep playing our systems, because it wasn't like it wasn't working. Like you mentioned, we were losing 1-goal games.
Mhm.
And so we weren't getting blown out. We weren't getting destroyed by teams. It was 1 goal. It was 1 bounce. And it was just like, let's stick to our systems, stick to how we play. And these bounces are going to eventually go our way. Next thing you know, like you said, last 10 games of the season, we get a couple of guys back from the American League. Next thing you know, we're turning it around and going the right way when going into the playoffs.
Let's take a look at the rest of the Central Division here, Mark. You get Kalamazoo and Toledo back. Iowa joins the fray, and now that becomes what was a pretty tough division last year when they were all in the Western Conference. Now you include the Kelly Cup champion Fort Wayne Comets in there as well. Just a really, really tough conference there in the Central.
Yeah, it's gonna be a tough year. I mean, there's gonna be a couple of teams that are really good, and you put them in another division, they're easily playoff teams, and they can easily miss out. And like you said, Toledo comes back, and they just signed CJ Hensick, and I think that's a massive signing. They got Brandon Hawkins. They took Billy Christopoulos back from us. He played for us last year.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be a really solid team. Then, like you mentioned, Kelly Cup champions, Fort Wayne Comets. They're going to be solid. So I think game in and game out in the Central, it's going to be a grind. It's going to be a battle. But I think our team, like I said, has a really good core. And I think if you they're going to be a really fast team, really good transition team. So if you get in on the transition, get going quickly, I think this team could be really good.
There's so much good hockey in this little area now between Indy and Fort Wayne and Chicago, the Quad Cities up there. Now you bring the Iowa Heartlanders into that this little hockey hotbed, as we've been calling it here on the podcast. What does this Iowa team bring to the ECHL, or the location of Cedarville, Iowa, bring to the fray of the ECHL?
I think it's huge. I mean, anytime you can add more teams, the better, right? But you add that into that location, and you look at Iowa, how many USHL teams do they have? And they do so well in terms of attendance. You throw an ECHL team into there, what's the worst that could happen? And I think for travel alone, it can be huge. You throw them in the Central, and you got, like you said, Indy, Fort Wayne, and Wheeling and Kalamazoo. It's all within a few hours of each other. So I think having them there just makes it that much easier. And in my opinion, if I'm a player and I hear, hey, yeah, your longest trip's going to be like 5 hours, done. I mean, that's massive. I only have to be on a bus for 5 hours. Yeah, I'll sign.
What do you guys looking forward to this season? The Fuel still have not won a playoff series, but got close last year. How do you guys win a playoff? How do you guys build on that and win a playoff series this year?
Well, we're coming off our first playoff win ever, so I mean, it can only go up from here, right?
Right.
But no, I think 2 years ago when we had when our captain was Craig Widzimirski, I wrote a piece with him, and he told me, he was like, when the season got canceled because of COVID, he talked to me and he said, man, he said, if we got into the playoffs and we got going, we were going to do some damage. And I think he's absolutely right. And last season, had we gotten through Greenville, they were on a tear headed into the playoffs, and you can see how well they played after beating us. And so I think you win 2 games and you get going, you get that momentum. In our playoff series against Greenville, it was a handful of bounces one way, and we could have come out of that series no problem. So I think it's the same thing as last year. Go into this year with the right system, the right team, the right group of guys, and I think they can get out no problem.
One of the most unique things I think about the Central Division this year is the addition of Jason Payne there with the Cyclones. What does he bring to the fold as the new coach of the Cincinnati Cyclones?
Jason's an awesome person. Every time I talk to him, he treats me very well, and that's massive when it comes to being a media relations director. So he's a great coach. He always has a great team, and they have a great affiliation with Rochester. And so I think using that affiliation to their advantage, Cincinnati could be a very good team this year.
The Indy Fuel open up their 2021-2022 schedule on Saturday night as they take on – who do you guys have, Mark? I'm looking through the schedule. I don't even know who you guys have. I'm sorry.
we got Cincinnati for the first 2 games of the year.
That's right.
And you know what? And I'll take it after seeing Wheeling 20-something times and Fort Wayne 20-something times to see a team that's not wearing gold or orange. I'm thrilled.
That's fair. Can you speak to that? This kind of opens it up, and it's. I mean, it shows my flaw that I don't even know your schedule. But can you open it up to last year, just how unique it was for everybody in the ECHL to see the same team time and time and time again? You guys saw Fort Wayne and Wheeling a combined 45 times, I think it was last year. Can you just speak to how unique last season was?
It was. I mean, first of all, let's just say thank God we played. I mean,
yeah,
so much credit to our president, Larry McQuarrie, and so much credit to Ryan Creelan and the rest of the ECHL for organizing even a partial season, organizing 14 teams. But at the same time, and like it was wild. I mean, first off, I barely knew any of the players last year, and like I mentioned, I barely knew any of the players last year. And we had a great group of guys come back from last year, but at the same time, we were going through media day, and I was talking to a couple of people, and they're like, "Hey, like who's best for content? Who's best for this?" I was like, "To be honest, I don't know, because I'd say for the first 75% of the season, we weren't really allowed to be around the players. I mean, we were allowed to talk to them, but I had to take my temperature every day. I had to do a COVID survey every day. You had to wear a mask everywhere you went. So that was crazy. And so it did make it difficult, but at the same time, I think in terms of the player side, it brought the team together because they were stuck in a bubble. I mean, all of them live in the same apartments. We own our own apartments at the Fuel. And so they all live in these apartments, and they're all only allowed to be at the apartments. They're all only allowed to eat together, be together, and all that kind of stuff. So I think it did bring them together. And then on our side, it was just, limited capacity. You're having to deal with all of I feel like it changed hourly almost. And then you're dealing with, our promotional schedule and the schedule in general was coming out a month at a time. And so we were only able to plan for a few games. Instead of releasing your entire promotional calendar at the beginning of the season, we're releasing, here's the first 5 games. And here's the next 5 games. Here's the next 5 games after that. So we weren't even able to buy our promotional items or like anything of that nature. So it made it really difficult to plan. However, in the end, everything worked out and everybody had a great time, but it was a challenging season. Not one that I ever want to go through again. I'm in my 3rd season with the Fuel, and I still haven't had a full year yet.
Wow.
We had 68 games last year, and I think 63 the year before. So I still have not done a 72 game season.
Well, this will be the year you do it, my friend.
Let's not knock on wood, man.
Yeah. Nothing's going to derail this one. What are you looking for? You guys are home on Saturday night to open up the season. What is the one thing you're going to sit there and go, this feels good?
That's a good question. A full crowd. I think in Indiana Farmers Coliseum, we've got when there's a big crowd in there, it's really loud. Yes. Last year, the most we could have was like 28% capacity or whatever because of social distancing. And this year we don't have that. And so if even 3,500 people, we see 65, if we can get to 4,000 or something like that, that place is going to feel like it's full. And when it feels like it's full, it gets really, really loud. So I think that's going to be the biggest thing. And then being around the players, being able to talk to them, being able to get to know them, being able to go in the locker room and say, "What's up, guys?" and like just kind of talk to them after a game and get to know their personalities and get to know who they are as a person, not just a player.
It is good to see you, my friend. And you are absolutely right about Indiana Farmers Coliseum, having been there for the All-Star game a few years ago with you, and you were a gracious host. That place does get very loud. It's an old cavernous barn. It gets really rocking when it gets loud in there. So I can't wait to see the fans stream back in there in droves very quickly.
Yeah, for sure. It's gonna be a crazy season. Like I said, it's gonna be one bounce for any team in our division could eliminate you from the playoffs or bring you to the top. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. I can't wait. I can't wait until we have a sold out game because it's gonna be wild.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I am so proud of you, and I know that I speak for Matthew as well, and just really good to see that you're doing very well, and all the best to you and your wife, and to the rest of the Fuel organization. Thanks for doing this, man, and let's touch base again a little bit later in the season. All right, man?
For sure, guys. You guys got me this job, so don't. So I appreciate everything you guys did and everything that you guys taught me because it's paid itself. So I appreciate everything you guys did for me.
You're awesome, man. Thank you very much for doing this. Tell everybody over there we said hi, and we'll talk to you soon.
Will do. All right, guys.
All right, there you go. Mark Granda from the Indy Fuel here as we continue on the Three Periods podcast, getting ready to bring in Riley Weslowski coming up here in just a few minutes. We're down to one division left. Whew. This feels like a trade deadline show without a trade deadline show.
Yeah, before we move on from the Central, I'm sitting here trying to decide which sounds worse for Indy, being in a division with Florida, Greenville, South Carolina, Orlando, Jacksonville, and Wheeling, or being in a division with Cincinnati, Toledo, Wheeling, Kalamazoo, Fort Wayne, and Iowa. They just they can't
like
get a break.
That's like asking somebody, I'm going to punch you in the eye or punch you in the nose. Which one do you think will feel better?
Like last year, we get started with the season, and at first it looked like they were going to be playing in the West for most of the year.
Yeah.
Then Fort Wayne gets confirmed to come back, and they move them to the East, and they're probably like, we can't catch a break.
Yeah, exactly.
So, they showed last year that it didn't really matter who was on the schedule. They could play good hockey. That's an amazing coach to have behind the bench, and it's going to be fun to see how games go there in Farmers Coliseum starting on Saturday night.
Keone Teixeira is one of the, and you got to watch him, I think, here in Wichita. It may have been the first year you and I worked together.
It was.
Keone Teixeira is an incredibly dynamic defenseman with the puck. And it's good to see his game progress to where he's responsible for quarterbacking the power play night in and night out for a team. And, it's good to see that, and he, in my mind, I think Keone Teixeira should be up in the American Hockey League with a team, but obviously, the minds of B think that he should be down here. But, a lot of good talent on that roster. You look at Mitch Gillum, who's recovering from season-ending surgery. He opens up the season on reserve. But then you bring in Diego Cuglietta, who they acquired from Utah last year, Brent Gates, who you and I saw in Tulsa, as well as Jared Thomas. Man, this is a group that is going to be able to put up goals probably in bunches early on here this season, and then they can shut you down on the back end as well with a pretty physical defensive core and some solid goaltending from Rockford.
Yeah, and don't forget CJ Ike, too, another guy who can just make plays with the puck. Before we get too far away from Keone Teixeira, I will always say the best defensemen in this league are the ones you don't hear about.
Yeah.
And you never have to hear about him because he just does things the right way. He plays the game well. He plays the game effectively. And like you mentioned, he's one of the best quarterbacks on the power play in the entire league. If I played on a power play, I'd want him behind me. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're starting to, I'm kind of thinking about our picks here a little bit that we'll unveil here in just a few minutes. Man, Mark is right. One bad bounce any night is going to be the one bounce that you're going to look at the end of the season and go, if that had happened this way, then this would have been different. And I think that, for everything we talked about with the South being kind of a murderer's row, if you will, down there, I think the Central could be the toughest division in all of hockey.
And it really pushes home the hockey cliche of play a full 60. If you take a minute off in this division, you're almost guaranteeing a mark in the loss column. So you've got to approach each game as its own game. You can't look at a weekend series or a week series. You got to say, we've got to win one period tonight, then win a second period tonight, then win a third period tonight. And if you're approaching games one period at a time, you can have success in this Central Division where there are plenty of teams that are hungry and chomping at the bit to snag a game or two for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. So waiting on Riley Weslowski from the Kansas City Mavericks to join us here in just a couple of minutes as we begin to shut down our season previews. What have been your thoughts so far? We've heard from Michael Keeley, Andrew Lord, and now Mark Granda from the Indy Fuel. What do you think about this league so far as we get season 34 underway?
You can just hear how excited these guys are for hockey, especially in Maine and Indy, where things were so different last year. I mean, Greenville got to play in some arenas that had some good crowds, but like Mark mentioned, Indy didn't really get to play in front of many crowds this year. And of course, Maine didn't play at all. And these guys just sound so excited to be back in full arenas, Andrew Lord included. We're finally back to a little bit of normalcy in a world that has no normal left in it. We know we can turn back to hockey, and I said, pick up the remote on Flow Sports and watch a game. If you can drive to a place and watch a game, it'll be a night you don't forget, I don't think.
Yeah, you can definitely tell. That was one of the things that kind of stuck out to me too, is that there's this undertone of excitement, and you get that at every point in the off season. Like, all right, here we go. We've got the rosters out. We've told you everything we're going to tell you about your team. It's just time to go out and drop the puck, and that works. But I think this year, above all others, it is the excitement level in this league to get games going and to get fans back in the building, I think is going to be something that is second to none. It feels like all of the teams in the ECHL are expansion teams again, and we're going to have expansion opening nights for the next 2 weeks.
I can't make this up. You literally just took my statement that it feels like we're about to have 27 first game in franchise histories in this weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not even at an ECHL venue this year, and I can't wait.
Well, yeah, you get to go to Ford Center, and they didn't have hockey at all there last year.
No.
You're going to go to the Ford Center there in Evansville here in a couple weeks and cover a game. I can't imagine what that atmosphere is going to be like there either. Even in a Southern Pro League market like Evansville, hockey atmosphere is a hockey atmosphere.
Oh yeah. I don't know of any hockey areas that weren't ready to come back.
Right.
Even the teams that really struggled last year. I mean, go look for the clips from Buffalo's home opener. By the way, Buffalo 3-0. Didn't see that one coming, but even Buffalo fans who have been through the works these past couple of years are just excited to be back in a hockey arena. This is the best time of the year. I mean, other than maybe June when we got a couple of nice pieces of hardware to hand out, this is exciting. There's not one person in the hockey community that's not happy to be here right now.
No. But privately, I'm starting the countdown to Jacksonville. Like, that's the next thing you look forward to is, okay, now that the season's underway, let's look forward to Jacksonville and find out what we've got coming up here in just a few months down there in Northeast Florida. Let's turn our eyes to the Mountain Division here as we wait for Kansas City Mavericks assistant coach Riley Weslowski to join us in our final division preview here on the Three Periods podcast. You touched on it earlier, and we discussed it earlier in our first period about the signing of Chad Costello and Jack Combs there in Allen. Is there another 1-2 punch in that division that is more vaunted than those two right now in Allen?
Man. I mean, anyone you put around Adam Plus Cash is going to have success.
Yeah.
You and I think, started a conversation. Maybe it was at a playoff game last year while we were just hanging out. Of if we had to do a ECHL fantasy draft or a draft where we got to start a new team and we had to pick a number 1 overall, who would it be? And I think Adam Plus Cash was my first pick because he's a guy that can be thrown on any line. You can throw him on the power play, on the penalty kill, and he'll make the guys better around him. A lot like Chad Costello will. It's all about seeing who Rob Murray is going to bring in as a supporting cast around him. We don't really know how many goes we've got left for Plus Cash. So that's a fun guy to watch. I'm excited to see what he can make of this season as well.
Yeah, I am too. I think that, we can ask Coach Weslowski this here in just a few moments, but man, I like the addition of Jesse Mitchin to that Kansas City Mavericks lineup. I just believe that he's going to have a huge impact on the Kansas City Mavericks this year, and he would have had probably 25, 30 goals. He was leading the league at the time of his injury last year in Allen in goals. And this is a huge power forward that you can stick anywhere on the ice, and he's got a nose for the net. So I think that that him up front, and then maybe a defenseman like Marcus Crawford on the blue line there for the Kansas City Mavericks, I think are a pretty good duo to have. And I think you'll see a lot of those two paired together on the ice this year for the Kansas City Mavericks. The pairing doesn't necessarily need to be up front and forwards. It could be a forward and a defenseman. But to your point about who we would draft first with an ECHL fantasy draft, mine has to be Chad Costello. You bring in a guy who's a salt of the earth player who can put your organization right on good footing from Jump Street, and he's got bushel loads of points behind him, and he's a Hall of Fame caliber player, going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer whenever he decides to retire. He's that for me. If you were to go fantasy and have the chance to draft the perfect team, if you will. Let's take a look at some of the other teams in this Mountain Division. We bring back Idaho into the fold after having a year off, and they have a Dallas heavy roster there this year. And they also bring back players from last year's who had played last year across the ECHL, and Zach Andrusiak and Colby McCauley. Will Merchant also played last year as well. So they're bringing players like that back. Jake Kupski had won an SPHL title with Pensacola last year, and then went to South Carolina and was on the Stingrays playoff roster last year there as well. So he was looking to be the first SPHL player to win an SPHL title and an ECHL title in the same year. That Idaho team looks like it's going to be really good again, led by Everett Sheen.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how they put themselves back in the league. And the team that I think has my attention the most is Utah, because of the question marks still surrounding some of that team. Ryan Kanasowicz just named the head coach a few weeks ago and was really put in a difficult situation, I think. Getting named a head coach when you only have 7 guys on your roster, and all of those 7 guys combined had less than 100 total games in the ECHL. He really had to go out and find some guys to build around. Tegan Zahn's going to be a great assistant coach for him, moving from player to coach there in Utah. That's the team that has my attention to start the year, because I want to see what they do in the opening weeks, whether that's to keep hunting for some players and keep building on what they've already got there. The Mountain Division has a lot of potential holes in it, and any one of these teams outside of, I think, really Allen and Kansas City, any of them can fight for those last 2 spots. So Utah's got my attention to start the year.
What do we make of Wichita?
Wichita has maybe even more question marks. looking at it now, it's hard to find a team that had more hurt in the offseason than they did. It looked like they were going to be able to build the team around Stephen Fournier, who in the ECHL era of the Wichita Thunder is the MVP of that team. He not only has led the team in points in the ECHL years, but he has been the recruiter, bringing in guys from around professional hockey to build the team, not only physically, but also goal scoring wise. It sounded like he was very instrumental in bringing like a Ryan White in last year, who maybe didn't change the score sheet a whole lot when he came in, but definitely changed the mentality of the team. I think the Stephen Fournier loss hurts almost as much as some of the other ones that they've had to deal with. So Wichita's going to have a lot of doubters to prove wrong this year. But when you've got a guy like Bruce Ramsey behind the bench, you're in a position to succeed every single night you take the ice. So only time will tell. A very tough test this weekend as they have to travel to Allen and a Steve Martinson-led team that is going to be playoff ready on night one. Obviously, they always are. So time will tell with this Wichita squad.
Would you rather have, if you're a Thunder fan, would you rather have the offensive core come back and have a new defensive core, or have the defensive core with a new offensive unit and the same goaltender?
Yeah. The offense was really led by the couple of Toronto guys that came down in a Gordy Green, especially Jeremy McKenna, some of these guys that didn't have a place to play, and Toronto and Wichita made a handshake agreement to give these guys a place to have an opportunity, and they succeeded the second they touched the ice. And I think it was what they did to start the year, because they got called up pretty early into the year. They sparked that offense and really put a lot of confidence into those Thunder skaters. But then that's where I go to my true decision, and that's the back end. There was no team more aggressive in the back, I think, than Wichita. The law firm of Sean Allen and Jacob Graves are two of the scariest guys to skate into across a blue zone or across a blue line into, are those two guys, because not only are they going to lay the boom, but if you don't like it, they're happy to drop the mitts as well. The defense had pieces that were not afraid to lay the body down. One of the things I liked to count last year was the block shots, and there was not one member of the Thunder defense who was not afraid to drop down and take one for his team. That Thunder defense is much more valuable to bring back than I think that Thunder offense, because there are some pieces to the Thunder offense that are still there that you can spark it behind. The defense is what they really could use back.
Yeah, and I think, this is the last thing I'll say about the Thunder here as we get going. And you can read my preview on the Thunder at fieldpasshockey.com. But the one thing that I will say about the Thunder here as we kind of close up this angle of the discussion is that it is going to put a ton of pressure. The lack of a true offensive playmaker is going to put a ton of pressure on a Mateo Gennaro, a Peter Cornella, Jay Dickman, Braden Watts. Just to name those are the four core players I think that immediately come to mind for a Wichita Thunder fan, as thinking, okay, these are the four guys that are going to provide the offense for the Thunder this year. I think there's a whole lot of question marks and skepticism among the players that were brought in and the rookies and things like that, and that is natural to have with any kind of turnover. But I think if, to your point, and I agree with you, I would much rather have that defense that was not afraid to lay the body and not afraid to lay down and block a shot and help out their goaltender. I would much rather have that defense than what I would the offense right now for Wichita. Although, and I think you would agree, I think you and I both agree that the defense and goaltending for Wichita will be a far superior strength this year for that team than the offense this year, whereas last year it was kind of flipped. The offense was the strength of the Thunder, where the defense kind of at times was a little fallible.
Yeah, and Wichita did, obviously all the teams did, but they announced their season open roster, and they've got a couple of those names on defense that you still know are going to be ready to commit to the play. A Cam Clark, who is maybe a little not spoken about as much, but is always willing to take one for his team. my favorite guy on the entire squad maybe is Steven Johnson, who is,
Yeah.
in my eyes, probably a top 2 or 3 penalty killer in the entire league. Um, another big pickup. Like I said, only time will tell with this Wichita squad. I'm excited to see what they can make with this season as well. I really think Allen and Kansas City have set themselves up to be a top 2 in this division, and the rest is just up for whoever's ready to fight for it.
Yeah, yeah, and then there are the Rapid City Rush as they moved on from Daniel Tatro in the offseason, brought in Scott Burt, who is an assistant with the Idaho Steelheads when they last played in 2019-20, and they bring back players like Garrett Klotz, Logan Nelson signed there in the offseason after racking up nearly 50 points in the SPHL last year with the Birmingham Bulls. Hayden Levine, who played here in Wichita last year, is up in the Black Hills of South Dakota, and several players from that team back last year, and they are still working with the Arizona Coyotes again this year. So I think that team is laying in the weeds, if you will. We don't know a whole lot about the Rapid City Rush right now, and I don't think we will know a lot about that team maybe in the first 10 games. And I think that is the same for Wichita, and maybe even the same for Utah and in Idaho too. Utah has 11 players on their roster from the American Hockey League. That Idaho team really has they played a couple of exhibition games against Utah. Maybe they have a feel for each other, and maybe they won't take as long. But I think Wichita, Tulsa, Rapid City, you could say it'll probably be 10 to 12 games before we know what the identity of these teams are, especially Rapid City.
I think bringing back Adam Carlson in the crease is another bright spot for Rapid City. He's a guy that will have his rough nights here and there, but you're going to get at least some consistency out of that guy. He's going to put you in a position to win hockey games. Start right there and work your way forward. It's just another team that time's going to show what the team has in the makings. And the Mountain Division is the one of the 4 that I think we really have a couple teams standing out from the rest so far.
Yeah, I agree. Rapid City has 5 goaltenders on their roster, on their season opening roster. That is insane.
Yeah.
One of them, David Tindek, came down from the American Hockey League. But and I agree. We talked about that separation, and it does appear now that Allen and Kansas City have kind of separated themselves from the pack on paper.
Yes.
On paper. We talk about, you can't win a championship on paper, but as we look at these rosters and we break down, well, a lot of this is anecdotal evidence because we've seen it with our eyes, what Chad Costello and Jack Combs can do in Allen, and we know the kind of teams that Steve Martinson will have every year. So it's almost a lock to put Allen up there in that top 4. And it feels like Kansas City's right there as well. Tato had a full off season to recruit, bring in Josh Robinson and Riley Weslowski to work on the defense and the goaltending. And I think that Kansas City team is a team that could have a win percentage above 600 this year. I think another 500 or subpar year, and I don't think Tato comes back to Kansas City.
Yeah, this is a huge year for him. It was very clear in the closing stages of last year that he had earned the respect of the guys on that team. They played a lot of games where they knew they were out of real playoff contention, but those guys fought like they were playing their last minute of hockey. And you can tell that he demands respect behind the bench and is going to get it. And bringing in Robertson and Weslowski, it might be one of the best coaching staffs in the ECHL right now. They're going to be, those are 3 guys that really know the game of hockey well and are going to set up their team to win every single night.
Yeah. And, you get quite a bit of help as well from your affiliate there in the Calgary Flames and Stockton Heat as well. So good to see that Calgary is finally chipping in on the Kansas City experience there. This year, I think they sent down 6 or 7 guys to start the season there up in Kansas City. So it'll be interesting to see that. move forward as well. Anything else stand out to you here with the Mountain Division as we get ready to transition from our divisional breakdowns into our picks?
Yeah, it's just exciting to see a couple of these teams that have made themselves powerhouses of the ECHL get to return with many new faces. I mean, these are not the Utah and Idaho that we're used to seeing. They are completely different teams. So, different leadership, different players, all of that. So, the Mountain Division has the most potential for surprises this year, I think. So,
Yeah.
obviously, Kansas City at Iowa this weekend. I think that's going to be one of the major games to watch as well.
Yeah.
So, man, buckle in.
Yeah. Yeah. No, no slouches at all in the ECHL.
Can't take a night off this year.
Here this year. Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be fun from really tonight all the way through April. And the fun's just going to get even more pressure packed here, I suppose, as we move on through the next several weeks and months. Let's move on to our third period. Before we go, unfortunately, we were not able to get Riley Weslowski in here, and maybe he'll dial in the next couple of minutes. But if we do, we'll have him on here. But it's time, ladies and gentlemen, for our picks. Our picks to click, as Ken Harrelson would say. The Hawk. It's time for our playoff picks.
Absolutely.
And, who do you want? I mean, this is your show. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna cede control back over to you after running it with the guests here. So I'll let you move on, let you drive the bus here for a bit.
Well, the first thing I want to mention is we missed history in our second period there. Alexi Diaust scores the first goal in TR history. So the first of many, I'm sure. So
yes,
looks like they've got about 10 minutes left. 5-2 is the score in favor of Newfoundland right now. Those are going to be fun games all year long. They play tonight. I believe they play one more time this weekend, and then same place, same time next week. We'll be hosting a podcast, and they'll be duking it out on the ice. Maybe we've got a tradition going here where they're going to face off on Thursday night while we're doing these. So,
hey.
I'm so excited to see expansion teams. I've watched almost every single Seattle game so far in the NHL, just because to see the hockey landscape grow is one of my favorite things in the game right now.
Now, I have not watched. So I have Verizon, and so I can get the Disney Plus bundle. But anytime I go to sign up on my phone, it tells me I have an error. So I'll try tomorrow while I'm on my final day of vacation to get the ESPN Plus package. Be that as it may, I still have not watched a single NHL game start to stop all year. What is it that you love about Seattle?
Well, first of all, their away unis might be the best unis in hockey.
That's true.
They are gorgeous.
Yes.
But it's the situation they're put in. I don't know many people who are not doubting the Seattle Kraken right now. There were a lot of question marks when they made their picks in the expansion draft because of the names that were available and the names they ended up taking.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a Pacific Division that doesn't have a lot of teams that are really high pedigree. We're going to make the playoffs year in and year out. This Seattle team could make the playoffs. I think Vegas is a lock out there. I think Edmonton is starting to work their way towards being a team that's going to have to be worried about in postseason and play. But the rest of them are just throw them in a hat and pick them out. So it's a Seattle team where each one of those guys knows everything they do on the ice is history. And I think that is, while being one of the most intimidating things to do, one of the most rewarding things for those guys. I am obviously have close feelings with Dave Haxtell, the bench box there, but he gets the most out of those guys every single night. They get popped in the mouth and they pop out the next night and play good hockey. So watch out for Seattle this year. If you can stay up late enough to watch their games, because they're out there in the Pacific, it's worth it so far.
I know your feelings about Dave Haxtell, and there's not enough beep in the computer to make that go away.
Yeah, I was unsure about that that hiring at first, but now looking back, he is the perfect guy to start that franchise off. So
Yeah.
Excited to see where they can go. I think I'm going to turn it over to you first to see your playoff picks.
All right.
As you kind of sent them to me this afternoon, I got a quick look at them, but I'm excited to hear your reasoning behind them.
All right. So let's do this. Let's get old Harding's playoff picks up here on the screen for you. We'll get that going here just momentarily. Here are my picks for this season, and here you go. We'll go from mountain to, or we'll go north to mountain. We'll go from left to right on your TV screen and radio dial. In the north, I think the Newfoundland Growlers are a shoe-in to win that division. I say shoe-in, and I mean it. Well, if you come out with 13 American Hockey League contracts on your roster, plus you have Zach O'Brien and you have Marcus Power coming back from overseas, and all of the hubbub around that, that's an instant win right there. So, and in everything that they had been through over the year, over the off season with the whole drama with Mile One Center in the city of St. John's and all of that, I really think that fan base is looking forward to getting back to playing hockey again, and they will see hockey past the month of April out there in St. John's. I think that they win the North. I think that Florida will win the South again this year. I think death taxes and Florida winning 40 to 45 games will do it. I don't think it will be a runaway and hide situation for the Florida Everblades. I think that the Swamp Rabbits and the Stingrays will both have a lot to say about who comes out of the South Division. By the way, I totally agree with you on the Fort Wayne Comets logo in the Central. One of the best logos in North American hockey, period. That is a tremendous logo, and it is rarely used by Fort Wayne. Should be used a lot more. I think even in their title defense, the Fort Wayne Comets are your Central Division champions. That team, when we talked to Ben Boudreau here a couple of weeks ago on the show, I came off of that thinking, no matter what this team has, this guy is the right leader for this club.
Absolutely. And
he's the steady hand on the boat for this club. And you could tell that he had that quiet confidence about him last year when you and I watched him in the playoffs here in Wichita, and then even into the Kelly Cup Finals last year. And my stock is really high on Ben Boudreau and what him and Olivier Legault do out there in Fort Wayne. I think that the title this year goes through Fort Wayne rather than Toledo, and here's the reason why. Toledo's not going to have a single player sent down to them from Grand Rapids this year. So this is a totally free agent stocked Toledo Walleye roster this year. It is going to be a huge difference watching assigned players in Fort Wayne and not assigned players in Toledo. And I think that alone will be the difference there in the Central Division. In the Mountain, Steve Martinson is going to continue to run the Mountain for as long as he is in Allen, which I do believe this will be his last year, unless the Allen Americans franchise changes hands. I think that if you're game planning to stop Chad Costello and Jack Combs, then there's Brandon Truk and Spencer Chuck behind them. And then they have two more lines that can run out there and punch you in the mouth. This is an Allen team that I think, while not fully loaded for bear like past Steve Martinson teams, I think this one could do some serious damage in the playoffs, and I think that they're your division champions. I think Kansas City makes the playoffs there in the Mountain. I have Idaho in the Mountain, and Tulsa is my sleeper there in the Mountain Division there as the 4 seed. Toledo, Iowa makes the playoffs in their first year in the Central, and John Peterson's Kalamazoo Wings make the playoffs there. In the Central Division, Nick Bootland returns to the Kelly Cup playoffs. I agree. I think you and I agree on this as well. The South Carolina Stingrays and Greenville Swamp Rabbits go in there. We may have a different 4 team, but I think in the end that that Orlando gets enough help from Syracuse and Tampa Bay that they get into the playoffs there in the South. And I really love what Reading is doing. If they finish, it would not shock me if they finished first in that division, just given what they have on that roster. They have Pat Nagel, who is a all-world ECHL goalie. Several huge signings up front for that Reading Royals team. I think that they make the playoffs as well. Adirondack will join them, and the Maine Mariners punch their ticket to the dance for the first time in franchise history. So that is my 16-team Kelly Cup playoff field when the dust settles in mid-April.
So I got to know, if Fort Wayne wins back-to-back, does the second banner have to have that logo on it?
Ooh. It has to, doesn't it?
I mean, one of the two needs it.
Right. I mean, it has to. It's so underused. Like,
I love it. As soon as you asked me to kind of throw something together so that we could show these teams, I skipped past the main logo because I love that one so much.
Yeah. I mean, that is a fresh logo. No doubt about it, man. There are some sweet logos in the ECHL. I love the Trois-Rivières logo, and I love the Iowa logo, and I can't wait to see what Savannah comes up with next week. Man, that's just, it's going to be really cool.
Yes, indeed. So
those are my. You have anything you want to add there to the picks?
I'll say one last thing about Reading, and that's something I've already said multiple times. That is my favorite affiliation in hockey, and that's not because I'm a Philadelphia Flyers fan. It's because it's the one affiliation through these years we've seen really effectively used all the way through all 3 lines. They work together. They help each other out when they need the assistance, and all 3 teams are finding ways to succeed and finish near the top most years. So I'm excited to see that Reading team. I also have them in my playoff field.
All right. Well, let's break down your playoff field here as we go here. So here you go.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. That Newfoundland team, they've got so much support. You lose a guy to Toronto, you're okay. You've got guys that are wanting to step up and have that next man up mentality. That's a very hard team to beat all year long. In the South, I've got Greenville winning. This is probably one of my, I guess I have 2 real dark horse picks, but they've got so much to build off from last year. And I made this pick before I talked to Andrew Lord, and now I really feel confident about this. He knows what he's got to work with, and I think that's a really high caliber coach to have behind you going into the year. I'm excited to see what they can do. They lost 8 of their first 11 games to start last year. Flip that around and win 8 of your first 11, and you're in the driver's seat in the South. So
yeah.
I'm right there with you in the Central. I think Fort Wayne is the team to beat right now. Ben Boudreau is an amazing guy to have behind your bench. He keeps things calm. And we asked him about the games in Wichita, the playoff games, which we thought were some of the most electric hockey games we'd ever been to. He was like, yeah, it was nice. Wichita fans were a little loud, but we got in there and we got a win. So that's what mattered. I mean, he was unfazed by what we thought was one of the most electric places that we had ever been for a hockey game. I don't know if the whole Kelly Cup goes through Fort Wayne, but the Central Division definitely goes through Fort Wayne.
Does the West?
We'll get there.
Okay.
We'll get there. In the Mountain, I have the Mavericks by about that much.
Ooh.
I think Kansas City and Allen are going to do this all year long. And the games they play against each other decide who's getting the 1 seed. It all depends on how Kansas City starts the year. You're going to get success from Allen throughout the year, but can Kansas City start well and pick up points on a consistent basis? If so, it's going to be very hard to keep them from that top spot. A lot of this also has to do with the formation of Robertson, Weslowski right next to Tato Had. Those are three guys who know the game of hockey so well. They're going to set up their players to make good plays and win hockey games.
Yeah.
But like I said, just about that much. Filling out the mountain, like I said, Allen. I also had Idaho and Tulsa. These are the ones that felt the most comfortable. They didn't feel comfortable, but they felt the most comfortable. I'm sure that we are not right on the 4 teams in the mountain. I mean, I'm sure one of the teams is going to surprise us and do something.
Yeah.
But this is the one I can feel the most sure in. In the Central, I do think Toledo give Fort Wayne a run for their money, but that lack of assistance from the AHL is going to hurt them just enough. And there's always the question mark, if they've got a guy succeeding, what if he gets called up
Right.
with no replacement sent down? So
Right.
that's what I think separates Fort Wayne and Toledo. I also think that Iowa, along with Iowa, AHL, and Minnesota, put together a quality an ECHL team in their first year, make the playoffs. But then that's where I differ from you. I think Indy steals that 4th spot. Take any of the points that we just spoke about with Mark, whether it's Keone Teixeira leading the power play or Mitch Gillum as the current 3rd slotted goalie, who is easily one of the best goalies in the ECHL in the last couple of years. That's going to be a deep Indy team. I think they sneak into that 4th spot and then they give Fort Wayne some trouble in round 1. That'd be a hell of a team to knock off to get your first series win in ECH in your history. So that'd be a fun one.
Yeah, no kidding.
In the South, it's still the same teams, but it's a little different order. I think Florida follows up Greenville. That's another one I think is going to be real close. I said it to you earlier. These 4 teams will make the playoffs, and they'll make the playoffs the last week of the season. And that's when we'll find out how they drop. I think Orlando is a little bit better of a team because they can build around one of the league's most dynamic players in Aaron Lucic. He made plays with all sorts of guys last year. He was on a couple different lines as COVID brought people in and out, and still found success and made those guys good around him. Watch out for this Orlando team. Then in the North, I do think the Thunder and Reading are the 2 teams to follow up Newfoundland. Reading, I agree with you, is a team that if cards fall the right way, and Philly has got a loaded farm system right now, if they don't need some of these guys in Lehigh Valley and they're able to help Reading out a little bit, they could go on a heater and give Newfoundland a run for their money. Then my 4th team is Trois-Rivières, and that has to do a lot with the leadership group. They announced that earlier this week, and figure out the right way I want to say this. The leadership group is one of 3 guys who all play the game the right way and have been playing the game the right way for a long time. You and I had the chance to cover Matthew Gagnon when he was here, and there's not a shift that he takes off in the mentality department.
No,
he's a team first guy. You don't touch one of his players without a little bit of payment on the other side, and he's going to make sure that he stands up for all his guys around him. Cedric Montminy is the captain, and that's a wonderful guy to build a brand new team around. I mean, opening day of free agency, these guys went out and brought 5 French Canadians in. Not only do the fans want that, but guys want to be around players like that. They might not have gotten the best of luck on opening night against Newfoundland, but keep an eye on this team. I think they sneak into the playoffs and could potentially do a little bit of damage.
Yeah, I agree there with you on the leadership aspect there of Trois-Rivières. I think that 4th spot, though, as we've seen in the North every year, that 4th spot has always been a slugfest to the end, and so I think that that is that it will be as well this year, and I think Trois-Rivières will have some say in that, but I mean, it's going to be very, very close for me on if they are in or out. So let's do this. Who wins your conferences?
I'm going to take Allen in the West, and that is because I think if they do end in the 2 position, it sets them up for a strong opening round of the playoffs. Obviously, playoff Steve is not the guy you want to see on the opposing chart.
No.
They could really have a strong opening first round, and if it's them and say Kansas City meeting in the second round, that's a slugfest. You might be facing Fort Wayne in the third round. I mean, it'll take a lot to get to the finals, but if they can keep everyone that they've got, that's a stocked lineup. On the other side, I think it's Newfoundland that makes it all the way, only if they're able to keep their affiliated players. If a lot of them get pulled up to Toronto, that's a lot of holes to fill with maybe not a ton of players available, at least of the caliber you'd want maybe. If they can keep the assistance from Toronto, that's going to be a very hard team to stop. So I think Allen on one side, Newfoundland on the other, duking it out for the Kelly Cup.
Ooh, I love that Newfoundland pick, but I'm going to go South Carolina winning the East because I like the approach that they had there earlier, that they had in the offseason of going and getting more physical players. I think that was really astute on Ryan Blair to go and pick up some of these players like a Chaz Redekop and a Malcolm Subban to bring in and have there this year. I think South Carolina wins the East. Out West, I think we get the Western Final that we probably should have had last year, and that the 7-game slugfest between Allen and Fort Wayne. I think age catches up to the law firm of Costello and Combs. So I think when they tail off, I don't know if there'll be enough coming back to put Allen over the top. So I think Fort Wayne still wins the West. And I think it's a rematch of last year. For me, I think that the South Carolina Stingrays are your Kelly Cup champions this year. They get that next piece of they get that revenge on Fort Wayne for what happened in early July.
Oh man. Well, one thing's for sure, and that's all of these picks are sure to go wrong because the ECHL has 27 teams who, as of right now, are in a position to make the playoffs and could surprise anybody. It's one of the things that makes the ECHL unique. In some of the other leagues of hockey, we can really count a couple teams out here and there, but it's hard this year, man.
It is. Who you got for your Kelly Cup champion?
I've got Newfoundland, but only if they're able to keep that depth. You've got to look at. I know that we hear from coaches and they say, we don't really worry about who's on the other side when we line up for a game.
You do.
Yeah. Game 1 of the Kelly Cup Finals, you've got that patch stitched on your jersey. You belong there. And then you go line up in the center circle and it's a team of AHLers. It's like a JV basketball team in high school having to face off against a college team that came in for an invitational.
Right.
If they can keep all of that experience and depth, that's a hard team to beat. And they proved it tonight going in and spoiling opening night. Man.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. That's going to be tough. That's going to be tough for sure. If you are out and about this weekend, we have some games on the Field Pass Hockey app for you. 7:00 tomorrow night, it is Maine Mariners hockey. Michael Keeley will be on the call there as the Worcester Railers go to Cross Insurance Arena to take on the Maine Mariners for opening night 2.0 there. Also on Saturday, the Greenville Swamp Rabbits head to North Charleston to take on the South Carolina Stingrays. The Cincinnati Cyclones take on the Indy Fuel. Game time there set for 5:45 Central, 6:45 Eastern. Andrew Smith on the call. And then 7:20 Saturday night, Maine and Worcester at DCU Center. By the way, Joey Chestnut, the GOAT of competitive eating, will be in the house at DCU Center, and there are going to be people who are going to try and out hot dog the hot dog champion.
Oh,
yeah. That can only end one way.
That kind of sounds like Charles Barkley trying to stop shots from Wayne Gretzky on TNT last week.
Precisely. That's only going to end one way. The Saturday night slate, a 6-pack of games on the app for you Saturday night. The ECHL slate ends at 6:35 with me on the pregame show, getting you set for Wichita Allen in the season opener, and then we'll finish it up Sunday afternoon at 1:40 with the Field Pass Hockey pregame show, getting you set for the weekend finale between Wichita and Allen. And then that will close the book on week 1 of the ECHL season, my friend. And it puts us 1 week closer to the appearance, to the glorious return of you, my friend, back here to the Air Capital, a tidy 8 nights from now.
I am stoked. I found out a couple months ago I was going to be in attendance for Wichita Thunder's home opener, and I'm stoked. I haven't got to go to a Evansville game yet, and due to a couple scheduling conflicts, I won't get to make it this opening weekend when they open at the Ford Center. So my first taste of live hockey this year is going to be back in Wichita. I'm stoked to do that. So
yes,
next Thursday night we'll do one of these, and I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about in what is proving to be an excellent opening weekend of ECHL hockey. There's been exceptional hockey going on in the NHL and AHL so far. The message of this season is it doesn't matter the team name on the front of your jersey. You can win a hockey game any given night because it's the underdog's year so far.
Absolutely. Let's hope that continues here this year in the ECHL as well. As always, you can follow us on Twitter. We are at 3 Periods Pod. Our thanks to our guests tonight, Michael Keeley from the Maine Mariners, Greenville Swamp Rabbits head coach Andrew Lord, and Mark Granda from the Indy Fuel. We'll get back to Riley Weslowski a little bit later on in the season. Buddy, man, we're underway. I'm pumped. I will see you next Friday, but then we'll do one of these next week, and then I'll see you next Friday. How about that?
Yes, indeed. We'll make the executive decision. We won in overtime or in regulation today. We won't play overtime today.
Right.
We thank every single one of you who has stuck it through this season opening edition of the 3 Periods podcast. In case you are new to the podcast or don't know, we'll join you here every single Thursday night throughout the season to fill you in on what happened in the previous week of hockey and get you set for the weekend slates of games. We're going to be in Jacksonville before we know it in January, and then we're going to be raising the Kelly Cup in June before we know it. So put on your seatbelts now. This is the best time of the year. Go catch a hockey game if you can this weekend, and we will surely see you right here next Thursday night. He's Matthew Harding. I'm Matthew Will. Thanks for joining us for the season preview opening edition of the 3 Periods podcast. We'll see you next week.
You've been listening to the 3 Periods podcast. Do you have a topic you'd like discussed? Hit us up on Twitter at 3 Periods Pod with the hashtag TPP on FPH. And for the latest news on the ECHL and minor league hockey, visit fieldpasshockey.com.
They're going home.
Thanks, Coach.